It's another week. It's another week. The Pastor Don weekly devotional with Pastor Don Meinberg. And I am your host, Donovan Sadiq. Well, I'm not really the host. Pastor Don is actually the host. And
you're just the one that does all the work.
Yeah, I'm doing all the work. Just a quick reminder, we're also videotaping Pastor Don in the studio. So you guys, because we got a lot of people asking us to put up video because a lot of people are visual.
Sure.
So we're just going to, get Pastor Don and, for those that want to just listen to the radio show, but they want to hear you and your show. And this week you're starting a new series.
I am.
And it's going to be called
it's a parable. I'm going to kind of keep it a mystery a little bit, describe some things to you, and see if the audience can guess what the message series is going to be about.
Okay, great. A lot of stuff happening this week in the world. Anything of significance that's going on? We're still working on the app.
Yeah.
We're going to be doing the app.
I'll tell you, Donovan, I'm really excited about the app because I know that it's coming. I know it'll be wonderful for the folks who enjoy the Pastor Don show. So, it's coming. Folks, it's going to be here very, very, very soon. And it'll be so easy for you to download it and enjoy the podcast show and any other things that we're able to do on it. So It'll be fun.
Right. And I think it'll be easier, especially for people our age where, we don't have time to go through Facebook, Instagram, all these different social media. So I just want to get to it, download it, and get to the business. I think it's going to be a great thing. We're working on that. Also, the church plant. How's that coming so far?
It's going good. Again, the driver of it is the election. We got to make sure that the right candidate gets in that will endorse and support the golf course project and get those plans approved through commission and through the city council so that we can get that clubhouse renovated and up to speed so we can start doing our services. So
services there, yeah.
We're still praying for the end of this year, but you know what? It's in God's timing, but it's going very, very well.
Right. Last question, too. We're having a Shalinda Bernard. She's going to be on the Hot Seat radio show. Are you going to be joining us this Thursday?
I hope so. I hope I can make it. I was very impressed with Miss Bernard at the debates, and I would love to be able to ask her a couple questions. So I'm hoping to be there.
Sure. Okay, great. Once again, like I said, thank you, Pastor Don, for all that you do. You're really active in this community, even though you live in Riverside. And we're just thankful to have you. I mean, I get so many good feedback on your daily devotionals. Really, people love that stuff. And they eat it up. I was about to curse right there. Sorry about that. But it's your show. You go ahead and take it away.
Well, again, I'll tell you this. I absolutely look forward not only to be here with Donovan. It's just such an enjoyable time with him, but also the fact that I could bring you this podcast show. It's a pleasure for me to give you my weekly thoughts. But the key is I'm praying that it is a benefit for you. I'm hoping that this podcast edifies you, brings you close to the Lord, or just gets you in that mode of thinking about God. And that's why I do it. So I hope that everyone's enjoying it. And then, of course, this show doesn't happen without Donovan, so I can't express it enough how grateful I am to him for everything he does to producing and editing the Pastor Don show. As Donovan had mentioned, we today are starting a brand new series that I hope that you'll enjoy. For the next few weeks, I'm going to take a look at probably one of the most popular parables in the Gospels. But before I get started in showing you what I'm going to discuss, first let me ask you a question. What exactly is a parable? Well, a parable from the eyes of man is an earthly story with an heavenly meaning. It is God being the storyteller, teaching his followers many things about life and the kingdom of God. What a parable is truly is wonderful lessons for you and I as believers. But the follow-up question to this is, why exactly did Jesus teach in parables? One of the things I love as a pastor more than anything else is when I'm thinking about these questions and then Jesus answered the question directly from his word. Let me read to you from Matthew chapter 13, verses 10 to 17, and I'll be reading from the New Living Translation. His disciples came and asked him, "Why do you use parables when you talk to the people?" Jesus replied, "You are permitted to understand the secrets of the kingdom of heaven, but others are not. To those who listen to my teaching, more understanding will be given, and they will be given an abundance of knowledge. But for those who are not listening, even what little understanding they have will be taken away from them. This is why I use these parables. For they look, but they really don't see. They hear, but they really don't listen or understand. This fulfills the prophecy of Isaiah that says, when you hear what I say, you will not understand. When you see what I do, you will not comprehend. For the hearts of these people are hardened, and their ears cannot hear, and they have eyes that are closed. So their eyes cannot see, their ears cannot hear, and their hearts cannot understand. And they cannot turn to me and let me heal them. But blessed are your eyes, because they do see, and your ears, because they do hear. I tell you the truth, many prophets and righteous people long to see what you see, but they didn't see it. And they long to hear what you hear, but they didn't hear it. Wow, what amazing words from the mouth of Jesus. That is truly intense. So let me paraphrase a little bit what Christ was saying in those verses. The Holy Spirit will teach those who are seeking God to understand the meaning of these parables of Jesus. But those who are lost in this world, for those who are not truly for God, who have not surrendered their lives to Him, they will not be able to comprehend the meaning of these parables. These stories are for believers to understand God's kingdom and teach us lessons on our purpose in this life from God's point of view. You may not realize it, but there are approximately 35 parables in the four Gospels, and there's probably one of them that is probably most well known than any of the other ones. So what parable am I going to focus on for the next 4 weeks from Jesus? Maybe this story that I'm going to tell you right now will help you figure out what parable I am talking about. There was a boss of a big company who needed to call on one of his tech employees at home about an urgent problem with one of their main computers. He dialed the employee's home telephone number and was greeted with a child's whisper. "Hello?" Feeling uncomfortable and having to talk with a small child, the boss asked, "Is your daddy home?" "Yes," whispered the small voice. "Well, may I talk with him?" the man asked. To the surprise of the boss, the small voice quietly replied, "No." Wanting to talk with an adult, the boss asked, "Well, then, is your mommy there?" "Yes," came the answer. "Well, then may I talk to her?" Again, that small voice whispered, "No." The boss thought that maybe this child was fighting with her parents who were at home, so he decided that he would just leave a message with a brother or a sister there watching over the child. So he asked the little child, "Is there anyone there besides you?" "Yes," whispered the child, "a policeman is here." Wondering why a cop would be at his employee's home, the boss asked, "Well, may I speak with the policeman?" "No, he is busy," whispered the child. "Busy? Busy doing what?" asked the boss. "Talking to Daddy and Mommy and the firemen," came the whispered response from the child. Now the boss was getting very concerned, and he became even more worried when he heard what sounded like a helicopter through the earpiece on the phone. So now the boss was wondering, what is that noise? The whispering child said, "A helicopter." "Well, what in the heck is it doing there?" the boss asked, now sounding alarmed. In a low whispering voice, the child answered, "The search team just landed the helicopter in our yard." Wow, now the boss is extremely alarmed and concerned, and more than just a little frustrated. So he finally asked the child, "Why are they there?" Still whispering, the young voice replied, along with a small giggle, "They're all looking for me." So let's see from that story if we could put it all together. We're talking about one of the 35 plus parables that Jesus taught in the Bible. Then I mentioned that it is one of the most well-known and most taught parable from Jesus. And finally, now my biggest hint to all of you was about a child who was considered lost by his family. So what parable do you think I'm referring to that I'm going to talk about the next 4 weeks? Well, if you guess the parable of the prodigal son, also known as the parable of the lost son or the two sons in Luke 15, then you would be correct. Now, most of you have probably heard this story or have read it in the Bible in the past. In essence, it is about a son who asks his father for a share of his inheritance. Then he leaves the house and squanders all of it, all the money, on worldly living and bad choices. He finally comes to his senses and comes back to the father, who throws a big party in his honor. Meanwhile, the eldest son is working in the back. Then he hears all this commotion, finds out there's a party for the younger brother who finally comes home, and gets very angry and frustrated at his father. The parable ends with the father talking lovingly with the eldest son. Now, at first glance, it may seem to you that the parable is pretty self-explanatory to anybody's ears. The youngest son was a spoiled brat who wasted his inheritance and only came back because he ran out of money. Then you may think that the eldest son is the one who got ripped off. He was the hard-working kid who never got anything from his father. And lastly, you might think that the father is just a big fool or just naive in allowing this youngest son back home and then throwing him a big party. And at first glance, that seems reasonable. You might think that you're right. But let me tell you this, folks. Looks can be deceiving. In the next 3 weeks, we're going to take a look in detail to the 3 main characters of this story. First, next week, we will look at the youngest son. Then following that, the eldest son. And finally, the father. And what you may think is your understanding of what God is trying to teach us, you may be a little surprised at second glance. But in order to truly get the meaning of this parable from God's point of view, then we really need to understand who God was speaking to or who his audience was at that time. I'm going to read to you from Luke 15, verses 1 and 2. Luke 15, starting in verse 1. Now the tax collectors and sinners were all gathered around to hear Jesus. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with him." This is what was said just prior to this parable of the prodigal son. As you can see, there are 2 distinct groups present in the audience at this time of the teaching of this parable. The first group were the Pharisees and the teachers of the law. And by this time, they had become bitter enemies of Jesus for his teachings. The object of these Pharisees was they would be following Jesus around for the sole reason to find fault in anything he said or did in order to condemn him. The reason for this is because Jesus had become very popular with the people, and he was attracting many, many followers, many more than the temple leaders. Now, in the minds and hearts of the Pharisees and the leaders of the temple, they would never consider to associate, let alone eat, with horrible sinners like tax collectors, prostitutes, or even the common man. Pharisees thought that they were way too educated, way too sophisticated, and way too important to be seen with these low-life, common people. Now, the second group of people in the audience that Jesus was speaking to were the sinners that the Pharisees called them. They were the common man, the middle class, hard-working people who were not scholars like the Pharisees. They were more like you and I, normal people who have sinned many times in their lives. They enjoyed listening to Jesus because his message was about love and about hope. So the one thing that we can learn from this parable of the lost son is that God has no favoritism. His message is for all types of people. This is very important to remember as we dive in deeper to these 3 characters of the parable of the prodigal son. I hope that you will join me every week and learn more about this fascinating parable that has a wonderful lesson for you and me. And please let your friends and family know about this series on this parable. You will truly be enlightened and uplifted. So I pray this morning that this podcast was a blessing for you And I hope it excites you for future podcasts on this awesome parable of Jesus. The Bible is full of so much wisdom and life lessons for all of us that is applicable not only 1,000 years ago, but in today's world as well. Again, I would love to remind you to please continue to read my daily devotionals on my Reflections Moreno Valley Church Facebook page and sharing them with all your family and friends. This is the best way to get our church plant name out to all the masses here in the city of Moreno Valley. And I would love if you would follow me on my Facebook page if you desire to do so. Also, please like and share this weekly devotional with all your contacts as well when you see it on Facebook or YouTube. As we've already discussed earlier, I am looking forward very soon to have an app that allows you on one click to be able to download the app and then be able to get my weekly podcast show from that app. So I'm looking forward to that. Please be listening for further developments on that. Also, we have an Instagram page. All you need to do is follow me. And the name is Reflections Christian Fellowship. I would love for you to follow me on my Instagram page. And again, I'm starting to hear more and more from you, and I'm absolutely loving it. If you want to get a hold of me, you can email me at dlarm777@hotmail.com, or you can IM me anytime off of Facebook, or you can leave me a message or text me at 951-522-1749. And of course, we partner with Inland Empire Informer. So if you want to contact Donovan and ask him me a question through him, you can always contact him on his page. We will learn in the next couple of weeks that there's a little bit of each and every one of us from the characters of the prodigal son, So I appreciate again you listening to my weekly podcast, and I pray that God richly blesses you and your family.
All right, well there it is. Great. I think that's going to be a very, very great series because everybody is familiar with the prodigal son and how that goes about. But a question that I have for you, Pastor Don, is why do you think that is so prevalent in? I mean that's a very likable parable for that. I mean, so many people today can relate to what's going on because to me it kind of relates to savings, and you take this buy this house you really can't afford, or people take all these risks and then it doesn't pan out, or they do things that they really shouldn't do, but they're living for today. How would you relate that?
All people. A lot of us can relate to the eldest son. Seems like we do everything right. We're working hard. We do everything. We don't make those same bad choices. And it seems like we're getting the short end of the stick.
Right.
But you know what? There's a lot of things to learn from that eldest son as well. So there's something for everybody in this parable. But the bottom line is the love of the Father. So again, the Father, symbolizing God, wants a relationship with all people. Those like the youngest son, and of course those like the eldest as well.
Yeah, the funny thing is, growing up in Catholic school, we heard about this parable. They told it almost not every year, but it's a staple in the pastor's mind and things like that. But a lot of people take it as just a story. Mm-hmm. Oh, look, it had a happy ending. You can make a Hollywood movie out of it, But, I mean, why, my question is, I guess I would say, is why is it that some of us like the older brother that did everything right, we still come up short into the stick? At least we feel that way.
Well, I don't want to get the cat out of the bag.
Oh, gotcha.
In a couple of weeks, I will explain
that as it goes out.
And I'm going to tell you something, Donovan. I'm not here just to keep you in suspense or pump it up. But it is interesting. A lot of people look at it and I really do believe they'll learn more about God, who God is, and hopefully become in a closer relationship with God.
Right. Somebody asked me a question and they go, well, what's Pastor Don's ulterior motive, or where does he want to go, in doing all these things? Why are you wasting your time? And I'm saying that from the question, spreading the gospel. Why are you doing this?
Well, it's funny. I've gotten asked that question from people from my church in Paris. They said, "Don't you have enough to do in my Paris church?" Mm-hmm. And the answer is yes. But I'm a real big end times type guy. I see the world. I've read Revelation. I know who wins at the end. I mean, that's an awesome story. But I also see the signs of the times. I see that we're living pretty much in those end times. And I really, really believe that, the words of Jesus in Matthew 28, 19 and 20 about going out and spreading the gospel, making disciples, in the name of Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. I think we are at a time right now that we really, truly need to get the gospel message out. Why do I do this? Obviously not for money. There's no money there. I'm not doing it for my name. I'm not doing it for anything. I'm doing it to get the gospel message out because I think we're in a position now that we need to be bold. Bold in our faith, bold in our witness, getting the gospel out to people to at least let them make that choice. At least they have that opportunity to make the choice. Yes, I want to surrender my life to Jesus, or no, they don't. That's your choice. But I want to do my part in being able to get these words out. These stories of Jesus, the Bible is full of so much awesome things that maybe a lot of people didn't realize. Mm-hmm. And if I can just give a small glimpse of that, that's what I want to do.
Right. Now, what if I'm one of those people that says, you know what, since God is so merciful and all this other stuff, and say I don't accept Jesus Christ or whatever that is, I mean, I'm going to be forgiven once I get up there. Is that true?
There's only one way to get to heaven. And it goes back to John 14 when Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one can come to the Father except through me. So, I mean, I've had a lot of people that ask me, well, I'm going to party for another 5-6 years, and then maybe then I'll be ready to give my life to the Lord. But the problem with that strategy is that you're not promised tomorrow. I mean, I unfortunately, as a pastor, I read about and I hear about so many people that unfortunately die very young through car accidents or drug problems or whatever.
I call them young geniuses.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, the fact that you're going to wait and supposedly have this party life and then possibly give your life to the Lord later, well, that's kind of risky business. That's almost like playing Russian roulette with your eternal life. And I will debate anybody, Donovan, debate anyone. I've played the party life and I've played the God-centered life. And I will take the God-centered life all day long over the party life because it has just got more joy and more hope in it than anything else. So I just think that, it is time. The time is now to give your life to the Lord. Well,
I don't want to sound facetious or anything like that, but living that party life, you had a great business. You started a great business. You had you still got a beautiful wife. I mean, I want that too. So let me do the 5 years of partying, and maybe I can get a beautiful wife and big, things like that too.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, but the beautiful wife, she, I don't know why she even married me to begin with. I mean, I was about so immature and so not worthy, but, that was a blessing from God. That's all I can say. But, I've been a Christian for many years. So even during the time that I had my businesses, I did it, hopefully I did it in a God-centered way type thing. But, when I was in my 20s, low 20s and stuff like that, I felt like the youngest son. I just wanted the money. Just give me the money. Let me do what I want to do. Until I realized that, I need to give to God first. And once I got that concept of giving to God first, I'm not going to give a tithing message, but once I got that concept, I just kept getting more blessed and more blessed and more blessed. And my business started to expand. Right. And then I just started living the godly life. And I'll tell you, like I said, that was the life I wanted, and it was really positive.
Right. So let me ask you this: as a pastor, and let's take your pastor out of it. As a regular man, a lot of your parables that you're giving, and the stories that you're giving, and the examples that you're giving, would you say that a lot of that is life based on what you've gone through?
Oh, absolutely. Well, the one that I did on the lost child, that's not the guy I've experienced.
Yeah, but
even though it is kind of funny, I once took my son to one of those theme parks, and I did lose him for 3 years. It was 3 years, 3 hours.
Yeah, about to say.
3 hours, and that was a frightening experience because, again, I wanted to go on a big ride. He couldn't go, and I told him to stay there. And he walked away. But so I can relate to that, the idea of looking for your son. But, a lot of these stories I do is based on a lot of life lessons, either from myself personally or my family or strong, close friends of mine that have experienced the same thing. So, yeah, these are real. Okay. These aren't just, stories that, just fictional stories. These are real stories that people have really experienced, and it truly relates to what the biblical message I'm giving out.
Right. I can't wait till you get to your end of times podcast. I look forward to that.
Well, I'll tell you, I can't. You know, one of the things that I've been blessed is meeting Donovan. See, the thing from my standpoint is, I never dreamed a year ago that I would be doing this. I never thought that there's a chance I'll be having an app that I could get the message of the gospel out, and then planning a church in this beautiful city of Moreno Valley. And then the possibilities of being able to do, you know, even future Bible studies, future teachings on the end times. I'm a big end times guy. I've studied it for 20 years. I really think I have a pretty good understanding of what the Bible teaches on it. And I'll tell you, it is an exciting story. It is not one that you need to be fearful of. It's not something that you have to worry about. It is exciting, not because God's ready to just show his wrath. It's because God is really merciful. And the book of Revelation is about God's mercy. So, yeah, I love the end times. I believe we're in the end times. And I do believe that people need to be educated about what God teaches in regards to this time period.
Right. And look at the signs. So when you get this, when you get the app complete and everything like that, we could be able to go on that app, and all your shows are going to be on there moving forward on that app. Because I just want to make sure, because a lot of people out there are like, well, where do I go to find that? Where do I say, well, there's an app which, for especially people our age, makes it a lot easier. We don't have to go to YouTube and Instagram, and it's kind of hard to find these things when you want the information. So by having an app, it makes it a lot simpler.
It does.
And so on this app, I won't end up missing anything. And that's Misty the Wonder Cat, because a lot of people might miss it, but by having the app, you're making it accessible
and easy to find,
so that they will find the information, even if they missed it in the initial one. So they can't say that they can't find the information. It's there.
Exactly. And again, my goal for that is to educate the people as best as I possibly can in regards to what God teaches. Nobody has all the Bible answers. No one knows everything for sure. But what we do know is what God shows us. And like you just said, Donovan, the seasons. It's all about understanding the times and the seasons and being able to relate that to what God teaches, either in the book of Daniel, in the book of Revelation, in the book of Zechariah. And it's all there for us. We just need to try to depict it and understand it. And that's what I'm going to be trying to do.
Right. When I was a kid growing up, everybody went to church on Sundays. Grandma made sure everybody was going. Mom made sure everybody was going. You aren't staying at home. And I'm not saying people aren't getting spiritual nurturement, while they're at home, because you have apps, you have things you can go to, you can watch it on TV. But why is it that it seems to me that these churches are declining in their fellowship? Because with all that prosperity message preaching and the people that just got decimated. I talked to a person yesterday, and they were like, "Oh, I'm really turned off by church because I did this and I did everything I was supposed to do, but I lost my house, I lost this, but the pastor is still running around in a Mercedes, big old house and whatever, and it seems like God is blessing him, but the pastor is supposed to the shepherd is supposed to take care of the sheep, not the sheep take care of the shepherd. Is that correct?"
Yeah. One of the things that I think a lot of churches have gotten away from, that I think is really sad, is that they got away from the mission. And the mission of church is to bring people closer to Christ through the gospel. And sometimes, like you talk about prosperity, preachers, or you talk about these other things that, are more interested in the show, the laser lights, the big show, the big entertainment and all that. And they forgot why they're there. The mission of a pastor, the mission of a church, it's all about Christ. And I think that's the problem. It's funny you said about the grandmothers. It wasn't even an option back in the 60s and 70s.
Early 80s, right.
80s, you go to church. Grandma, if you don't, man, you're going to get whooped type thing. That was it. And today it's a lot more apathetic. It's a lot more, very, I don't want to call them lazy, but it's a lot. There's so many more options, so people justify themselves not going to church. And I don't think the problem is the people. I really think the problem is the church is losing their focus on what church is all about, which is all about Jesus. It's all about the gospel message, dying on the cross, worshiping him. That's what church is, and not all the other distractions that I think a lot of churches do.
Right. I know your show's not political, but President Donald Trump recently rescinded Executive Order 6 something something that Lyndon Johnson said to keep the churches out of politics. Well, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, the way I understand that is I think that he mentioned that churches now will no longer be penalized for any political views that they have from the pulpit.
Right.
I think that's what that is. My opinion on that may not be the most popular, but the U.S. So
Right.
I think churches need to be for Christ. I'm a firm believer that the church's mission is all about Jesus. And, Jesus is all about, is represented in every book in the Bible. I think that we need to focus on Christ. I think we need to focus. Now, there's a lot of social issues that the Bible talks about that we need to be involved with. I don't see why a church, the pulpit, needs to be a political activist type discussion. I leave that to other arenas.
Right.
Leave that to other
Politicians.
places. I'm all for that. I'm not a political guy, but you know what? That's fine. But in the churches, again, the focus needs to be on Christ. And it has to be Christ-centered, and that's it. I mean, again, I'm a firm believer we need to talk about social ills. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to start this church, and you and I have talked about this. I don't think that our city council, I don't think our Moreno Valley government here has done a great job in helping some of the social ills of this city.
No.
And I know that the churches have not collaborated together and done a good job either. My goal is, once we do have this church in Moreno Valley, is to get some of these churches together, to get more cooperation from churches. Stop being so territorial. And let's see if the city council is not going to fix it, why can't some of these nonprofits and churches be able to go out and do what we can do collectively in order to help some of these social problems in Moreno Valley? And that's what I want to do. I really do, because I think there's a lot of things here that can be improved upon that a church. I don't understand why there's never a concert in the park of all the churches. Revivals, prayer revivals, getting the people together, getting the youth together. Churches can do so much, but they don't do it here in this city. They need to.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I think a lot of people are turned off, because if we don't see our religious leaders acting in concert together, why should we?
Exactly. And again, I don't know the percentage. I don't know the numbers, Donovan. You might.
Go ahead and ask me. I got the numbers.
Well, I would love to know the percentage of people in the city of Moreno Valley that would consider themselves churchgoers. I would say maybe 30-40% of the people.
Yeah, I would say at least 2/3 of the city.
Okay, let's say 60%. Yeah. So if those 60% of people, let's say, are Christ-driven people, would actively get involved with some of the ills of this city, imagine what a difference it would make.
Oh my gosh, yes. But the problem is, out of that 60, half of those do not go to church in Moreno Valley. They go somewhere else.
That is a problem. And that's why I'm a firm believer of the neighborhood community churches like the one we're doing out there in Rancho Belago. I think that we need to support the churches within our cities and our communities. As long as it's Bible-based and it's Christ-centered, I think that we do need to support these local churches, but not only because we want to have big, large, mega churches, because then we can collaborate together and do some work, positive things for the city. Donovan, I'm telling you, as long as God gives me breath, if God allows us to have that church in Rancho Belago, I promise you that's going to be, and you know me.
Yes.
I promise you that's one of the activities I'm going to do is to get some of these larger churches in Moreno Valley together and figure out ways to help solve some of these social problems.
Well, here's one thing that I'm going to say, and I've said this since you started all this stuff. The doors keep opening, and I'm seeing God work all the time. Through you in the community. I have not seen this being done with very many pastors in this church, because like I said, I can't even tell you, as long as I've been in this town for over 40 years. This is my 40th year. And I couldn't even tell you a pastor that I know of that is active in the community. I mean, honestly, off the top of my head, I can't.
That needs to change.
Yeah,
I mean, it needs to change now. It really does.
And it's sad, because you would think that you would have a church. This city's about 34 years old or whatever it is, and you would think that we would have at least one lead church that everybody goes, "Wow, that church has been here since the inception of Moreno Valley," or it's been here pre-Moreno. We don't have that, and
exactly. You've got so many awesome people going to church who truly love the Lord, who truly want to serve, who want to give, and yet we're not seeing that for the city. We're seeing it maybe for a lot of mission trips or different parts of the world. We're seeing a lot of things that people do, and I'm not knocking that.
No,
Those
not
are
at
awesome
all.
things.
But should you take care of home first?
But it's just like what it says in Acts. It says you first start in Jerusalem, then in Judea and Samaria, then all over the world.
Right.
But you got to start at home.
Home first. You can't go worry about what's happening over there.
And please, I hope the audience says I'm not knocking missionary work. I've done mission. I think it's awesome.
No, it's important, but
it is so awesome.
But you can't do missionary work if you ain't got a church.
You have to start at home.
Right.
We have some areas here that we could consider missionary work necessary.
Edgemont
and other
third
areas.
world country. Yeah. It literally is a third world country.
Even like Paris. I mean, there's a lot of areas in Paris. The same thing. I don't have a problem going out and going to the Mexicos, the Africa. That's awesome. But how about here?
Yeah, well,
what about here?
So some of these big churches here in Moreno Valley, and I'm not going to single out any particular one, even the ones in Riverside. Yeah, they've got these great missionaries in Africa and Belize and all these great countries and stuff like that, and Ecuador. God bless you. But 5 miles away, right in the little area of Paris and Edgemont, you can do a lot of work right there and still go home at night.
Exactly.
You can still do missionary work.
Exactly. Exactly. We can make this city so much God-centered. That's my goal.
Yeah, well,
God-centered and lift up some of the problems. The homeless, the youth. So many things that we can be helping.
I don't even think it's just the city, the Inland Empire itself. San Bernardino, that's a missionary.
Yeah, San Bernardino.
All those churches in San Bernardino. And yet look at the city and look at the people over there. They're impoverished. It's just getting worse and worse and worse. The politicians are just out of control with the corruption. That's a good question. Mm-hmm. So for all these pastors that are listening to, you say you don't listen to Pastor Don's show, but you do because you're stealing some of the ideas, which is okay.
No,
he doesn't mind as long as it's for the good.
Yeah, exactly. As long as
that's a good question. Why aren't you guys leading the forefront to solve some of these problems? Because it's obvious the city staff and the city people, not in Moreno Valley, not just Moreno Valley, in the Inland Empire, aren't doing it.
Exactly. So again, that's one of my primary goals. That's why I got involved with the Boys and Girls Club. That's why I wanted to get involved with the homeless over at the base, with the JPA and the U.S. Vets. That's why I want to get involved with different other or nonprofit organizations that we've been giving out so many, blankets and stuff, to these different youth organizations. We're not doing this just because we want to get our name out. We're doing this because the city needs it.
Right.
But you're only one person. Can you imagine if you had 10, 15 churches doing the same thing, all for the same common goal of this city? Well, you'll have more power than you imagine.
Right. Well, I have an idea, Pastor Don. Why don't we get these pastors together and have a pastor summit? Because who's that pimp pastor that's with Donald Trump? That one black guy, he was he was the advocate for Donald Trump, and he was a pimp pastor out of Chicago.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember.
And he just lost his home. Talking about, that's fake lawsuit. He's getting sued by the guy he didn't pay. He was using the tithing to pay the mansion off weekly. Yeah. This is another reason why people get turned off by church. But then you have people like yourself who are making a difference. Mm-hmm. Because you don't live in a mansion. I mean, close to it. No, I'm joking. Nice.
But I did get that house when I was a businessman. Yes, I've been in my house for 17 years.
Right,
so.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So you worked hard for that. Yeah. But, why don't you guys get together and have a summit? And, and I don't hear nobody calling for that.
And the question I've been asked by that, because I've talked to a few pastors, is how do we get started? Well, the way you start is the way you start. Well, not only that, but the way you start is the way you start anything. What do you start when you want to do something big for God? What's the first thing you always do? You pray.
Pray.
Why can't we get a bunch of pastors and people and let's just pray? Well, let's just say, what can we do? Let's pray and let's see what God can do through us. We get pastors and elders and leaders and people and just pray. And then let's pray over the city and see, hey, let's take it one step at a time, but let's start in prayer.
Right.
That's what I would do first.
With the turmoil that's going on in this particular city, in the Inland Empire, to me it reminds me of, like I said, the end days.
It is.
And, I mean, the people are so impoverished and there's no jobs, there's no hope. And when we see the pastors just, you got a church in this city, but you live in a nicer city. It's just, what kind of message is that? Jesus stayed among the people.
He did.
I just don't get that, but I really hope that you guys can pull that together. And how do you start other than praying? Just what we did doing that debate. You put a little meeting thing out, and you advertise it on Facebook. Hey, meet us over here at this time, this thing. It's a start.
It's a start. It's a start. Right now, we're not doing a whole lot, so just making that first move is a start.
Right.
And I there's power in people, but I think there's even more power in gospel. And if we do it all for the glory of God, and God gets all the glory, there's so much we can do for this city.
I mean,
I am a firm believer of that.
I believe if the churches could get together, instead of worrying about how much they're going to get paid for appearances, you guys can solve the homeless problem.
No question. I think we could solve a lot of the issues because I know a lot of churches have got awesome youth groups. Mm-hmm. Well, let's get those youth to these other youth that maybe are struggling. Let's do some mentoring. Let's do some other things that we can build up this community. There's so much you can do, and there's a lot of awesome people in this city, and in this Inland Empire.
The only thing that I worry about is you have these pastors out here who will take developer money and pitch a program. Oh yeah, warehousing is great. It's this. I know it's not political, but this is what was happening, which really put a bad stigma on pastors in the church. Why would you want God's children to work in a warehouse that's going to be automated? So this isn't even something a long-term type deal. Mm-hmm. And these guys were being literally paid by the developer to make an appearance, to which we had to put a stop to it by calling the IRS in, and then you didn't hear the pastors no more, and you haven't. And matter of fact, you haven't seen them since. Yeah. So
see, those things are the tough. Those are the hurdles that you have to get over. But like I said, there's a lot of people out there who feel identical to how I feel in regards to not only you said it right, Donovan. Not only Moreno Valley, the Inland Empire, because San Bernardino in Innovation, give us the wisdom, give us the ways of you, Lord, in order to go forward and be able to be a blessing for you. We love you, Lord, in the name of Jesus. Amen.
That's the Pastor Don Show this week. We'll see you guys again next week. Pastor Don, thank you so much.